is unavoidable. It is your destiny.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, you might notice that my camera angle is a little bit different. I finally got my mount for my prompter installed, so it's a little bit higher than normal. Alright, let me get some stuff shifted over. Alright, my friends. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Galactic Archives. As always, take a moment to settle in, get your tea, your water, and your blanket or sweatshirt of choice. We're not rushing tonight, the archives don't ask you to hurry, and I definitely won't either. I want you to take a deep breath. Also, Ajao, thank you for that amazing 17-month subscription streak. I appreciate you, sir. Very, very much. So, thank you. Tonight, we enter one of the most delicate, challenging, and deeply human aspects of narrative writing. How to write recovery. How to write agency returning after trauma. How to pace healing without collapsing the tension or exploiting the pain. To guide us, we'll be using Steps into the Past chapters 10 and 11, Between Ashen Breath and The Slow Return of Light. Over the next 2 hours, we're going to break down how these chapters structure recovery, examine pacing, silence, and embodiment, map the slow return of agency, look at how supporting characters scaffold recovery without taking over, and study how environment anchors trauma-informed narrative. Okay. This is another deep dive workshop like we did on Wednesday. I'll be quoting text directly. Let's begin with our first cornerstone, understanding recovery as narrative. Recovery is one of the most misunderstood parts of storytelling. Many writers think that recovery is what happens after the story, kind of like a footnote, a return to the status quo, if you will, a fade to black, and then everyone's fine. But recovery doesn't really work like that. It's a narrative act. It's a story decision, not an epilogue. And when I write trauma in my stories, physical, emotional, psychological, I owe my characters the respect of writing the recovery with the same care that you give to any wound. Let's start with a central principle. recovery isn't the absence of trauma. It's what the character becomes in the presence of it. When we talk about writing recovery, there are two common pitfalls. One, the over-dramatization. That's a mouthful. The over-dramatization trap. This is when healing scenes become melodramatic displays of pain. Sobbing breakdowns, violent flashbacks, big cathartic speeches. These exist, but they're not the heart of recovery as I look at it. Or two, the skipped to the end trap. This is where the writer wants to get the character back to normal, so scenes of healing are compressed into a paragraph, or skipped entirely. Neither of these honor the truth of recovery. Instead, I like to focus on real recovery. This lives in things like slow breathing, quiet touch, familiar objects, consistent routine, safe people in silent proximity, environments that allow the character to settle, and the difficulty of simple movements such as sitting, standing, eating, or entering a room. And honestly, one of the reasons I picked these two chapters as a study tonight is because I've been dealing with a lot of that myself. As some of you may know, I've been dealing with some health issues, so this kind of hits really close to home for me. So, might get a little deep in here for a bit. Oh, thank you! Yes. Thank you, Frosty Tools. Also, Wraith, thank you. This t-shirt, there we go. This t-shirt is actually another one of my favorites from Into the Am. They are not a sponsor at all. Kinda wish they were. But their t-shirts are amazing. Check them out. And they're having sales all the time. I have probably 6 or 7 of their shirts, and this is the one that I grabbed from my drawer this evening, and it actually works. So, yes, please check them out if you like really comfy shirts with cool art. I will also say that the art on these t-shirts is hand-drawn and hand-painted, and it is really, really fantastic. I actually have another shirt with a different design that glows in the dark. Not even kidding. Frosty Tools. Man, Frosty Tools is in rare form today. Oh, dear. Actually, yes. I will find a picture of that shirt for you later. Not this one. But I do have one that glows in the dark. Alright. Chapters 10 and 11 do this with remarkable clarity. Let's take one early example from chapter 10, where the text starts by anchoring Marin physically, not through melodrama, but through sensation. And this is a direct quote from the chapter. The carrier gently shuddered as the magnetic clamps locked in, the vibration humming through the deck plates, through her boots, straight into the marrow of her bones. Notice what's missing. There's no dramatic collapse, no intense flashbacks, no explosion of emotion. Instead, we get something called somatic anchoring, a trauma-informed narrative approach where the body responds before the mind articulates what's going on. The text doesn't tell us that she's exhausted. It doesn't even say that she's scared. It simply shows how the environment moves through her and around her. This allows the reader to feel the fragility without it being stated. Recovery begins here, when the story allows the body to speak first. Why does this matter? This matters because recovery is not a grand emotional climax. It's the slow reclaiming of internal authority. Marin isn't healed when she steps off the shuttle, but she's beginning to reclaim her footing the moment she touches her father's tags. She regulates her breathing, she leans on built structure, and allows Greer and Vec to flank her. Recovery isn't dramatic, it's incremental. This is honestly the backbone of this entire workshop. Before we move into our next segment, hold on to this thought. Recovery scenes are about dignity, not spectacle. They restore agency not by accelerating, but by allowing stillness. Segment 2. The return home as the first act of recovery. One of the most powerful truths in recovery writing is this. Coming home is not the end of recovery. It is merely the first part of it. Let's break down how Chapter 10 demonstrates this. The return is a threshold moment. The text frames Marin's arrival not as triumph, but as a transition. The shuttle slid through the upper atmosphere like a silent shadow. Inside, the quiet was heavier than the vacuum beyond the rainforest hull. This is crucial. The shuttle is not a return to safety. It is the liminal stage between danger and safety. It represents the fragile moment where the character is not threatened, but they're not yet grounded either. When Marin steps off onto the desert landing pad, we see the story honor this. She hesitated for the barest second at the top of the ramp. The mountain air was cool and sharp. She swallowed hard and forced her boots to move. She's home, yes, but she's not yet here. That hesitation is everything. Characters recovering from trauma often struggle with believing that their safety is real, trusting solid ground, and stepping into spaces where memory and expectation often collide. Writing that hesitation is writing recovery. And 2, environment as an emotional echo. Tanagis isn't just the scenery. It's a metaphorical extension of Marin's internal state. Let's look at this passage. The morning mist clung to the valley, curling over the treetops and spilling into the ravine below like slow drifting smoke. Mist, quiet, soft light, dawn. These are all recovery spaces. They're transitional, gentle, and liminal. The text never overwhelms her with sensory intensity. There are no bright lights, no harsh noises, or any crowded scenes. This is deliberate. Here's a second principle. The environment must reflect the interior pacing of the character. If the character is fragile, soften the world, allow them space, give them slow or soft light, and use quiet sensory grounding. Chapter 10 honestly models this pretty flawlessly. And 3, silent greetings as support. When Marin descends the ramp, she meets the 3 pillars of her support system, Ethan, Jared, and Greer. There are no words from Ethan, just a hand on the back of her neck. His hand came up, warm and solid, a wordless weight that said, "You made it." This is how you write caretaking without infantilizing. There we go. That's a word. There's no fuss. There's no urgency. There's even no emotional burden. Just grounding. And then there's Jared. His line is simple, but emotionally precise. "You're late." This is anchoring humor, a technique where tone reminds the character of continuity and connection. And then there's Greer. Greer doesn't say anything at all. He doesn't even speak to Ethan. He just nods. A small nod, a subtle report of clear perimeter, no tails, and the veil is intact. This tells us that safety is being handled. Marin doesn't need to perform strength or hold herself erect. The responsibility is shared by those around her. Why does this work? Because recovery requires witness, proximity, competence from those around you, and support without pressure. The chapter gives her all 4 within just a few paragraphs. Agency through stillness. Recovery is often misinterpreted as action. The character walking again, the character fighting, the character speaking a lot, or the character pushing through pain. How many of you have actually done that? I know I have. I can actually tell you that I've been doing that recently, and it's come back to bite me in the butt. So don't do that. But real recovery, especially trauma-informed recovery, often begins in stillness. Stillness isn't being passive. Stillness is a choice. Stillness is where the character says, I will not break today. My chapters demonstrate that beautifully. Let's break it down a little more. Marin's silence isn't passivity. Throughout chapters 10 and 11, Marin actually speaks very little. The text refuses to force her into catharsis, confession, or clarity before she is ready. This line is a perfect example. Marin didn't speak. She hadn't spoken much since boarding. Her hands rested in her lap, her fingers unconsciously curled around Jarius' tags, the metal warmed by her touch. Silence here isn't emotional shutdown. It's self-protection. Silence is the first boundary a character reclaims after trauma, and the people around her respect that. No one prods, no one interrogates, no one demands she talk. That restraint in narrative craft is essential. You give the reader permission to enter her quiet without exploiting it. And here's a second example. She didn't need to speak to let him know she understood. This is powerful. Choosing not to speak, that's agency. It's selective participation, and it's control over the exchange. When writing recovery, ask yourself, is the silence a void, or is it a choice? If it's the latter, you've given your character agency. 2. Support characters as mirrors. Every person around Marin reflects a different facet of her recovery. None of them overshadow her. None of them take her emotional labor or her emotional weight. None of them make her responsible for their reactions. Let's look at this. Greer is vigilance. His role is structural. He's the perimeter, the steady line. The unyielding posture of nothing gets past me. For example, Greer stood like he always did, his shoulders squared, his gaze level, the only sign of tension the set of his jaw. He doesn't talk about his worry. He doesn't collapse into grief. He simply stands. This is how you write the wall character archetype during recovery. They're silent, competent, present, and stable. Characters like Greer give traumatized characters the space to breathe. And then there's Vec, the mirror of stillness. Vec rarely speaks, but he's the one who models the quiet Marin needs. He's the reflection of internal watchfulness. Vec loitered a few paces ahead, his posture loose, but his eyes sweeping like a predator. Vec is the unspoken, I see what you see, the counterpart to her hypervigilance. When writing recovery, pairing the protagonist with someone who mirrors their internal tempo helps the reader feel understood with them. And then there's Jared. He's the emotional ground. Jared's presence is the emotional counterweight. He often sits on the floor. He keeps watch while Marin sleeps. He doesn't touch until she reaches for him. He doesn't speak until she allows him to. He watched every twitch of her fingers, every faint tremor in her breath, quiet vow that if the ghost came too close, he'd be there to pull her free again. From Chapter 10, and Scene of Vigil Kept. This is grounded, trauma-informed support. Jared doesn't attempt to fix Marin. He anchors her. He witnesses. He regulates his presence like a steady pulse. This is an extraordinarily healthy model for writing emotional support in fiction. And then there's Callista. That clinical maternal care. Callista brings a different balance. Warmth through competence, not through coddling. Her gaze missed nothing. The guarded set of her shoulders, the faint tremor, the lines of pain etched around her mouth. Callista doesn't panic. She doesn't overwhelm Marin with her worry. She simply assesses, offers grounding, and holds Marin steady. This is a crucial recovery writing principle. Supporters must not unload their fear onto the recovering character. Callista sets the emotional tone, which is calm, observant, and present. And then there's Ethan, the anchor of Marin's identity. He gives Marin a sense of continuity. His quiet is different from the others. His presence communicates, you are family, and you were not alone. You survived, and you came home. One of the strongest lines that showcases this, there we go, is this. His hand came up warm and solid, a wordless weight that said you made it. That's from earlier in chapter 10. Ethan doesn't need to justify the protection. He doesn't need to dramatize it. He simply offers a moment of grounding. This is how you write support that honors agency. It invites the character back into themselves. Okay, we went through a lot. Does anybody have any questions from section 1, 2, or 3? As a refresher, section 3 is, hold on. Goodness. I have an outline I'm using, give me a second. Alright. So segment 1 is understanding recovery as narrative. Okay. Segment 2 is the return home as the first act of recovery. And segment 3 is agency through stillness. Please let me know if you have any questions, because there's a lot of information in here, and I feel like I'm going too fast. Alright. Well, that's kind of why we're here, Wraith. We have an ad starting in just under 5 minutes. I'd be happy to share there's an outline in the writing workshop channel in the Discord. If you want to take a look at that, it might give you some ideas. But yeah, it's been a real challenge for me to really look at this story and take an honest look at how she recovers through the two major events that happen in the story. So it's definitely, and that's really honestly why I wanted to focus on these 2 chapters tonight. So we're not actually editing or writing tonight. I just really wanted to kind of do a case study like we did last stream and really dig into what these 2 chapters cover. So it's really talking about how to effectively write recovery and how to do it in such a way that helps your character reclaim agency. So there's a lot going on. Rothlin. The last stream that I did may actually be helpful to you. Go check out the writing workshop channel when you get a second. we talked about that exact problem. So, when you get a second, go check that out. Alright. Our ad is going to start in about 3 minutes. Three, recovery requires witnesses. This is the core truth that I honestly feel like I'm demonstrating masterfully, because I've really taken the time to really dig into Marin as a character and like kind of really get in her head, and that's not an easy thing to do. But it's important to remember that your characters rarely heal alone. Even if they want solitude, even if they believe they don't deserve the support, even if they try not to ask for help, witnesses to recovery are essential. Jared's presence is the clearest example of this. Jared sat where he had from the moment Callista left, ready to reach for her if the night turned dark. He is the night's watch. He holds the dark at bay. He doesn't save Marin. He doesn't even interrupt her dreams. He doesn't force comfort. He simply exists beside her long enough that morning can reach her. This is recovery. Not words, not explanations, not the dramatic breakdowns, but simply present. Recovery is the moment that the character realizes someone stayed, and I'm still here. Yeah, this is really kind of hitting hard for me because I've been kind of living a lot of this for the last month. So it's yeah. Me writing myself into corners? I don't know about that. We'll find out. Frosty tools. We have an ad starting in about a minute. Segment 4. The body remembers. Recovery is not only... Actually, you know what? I'm gonna stop there. Since we finished segment 3, does anybody have any other questions about segment 3? Because we just talked about... Oh my goodness. Support characters. Yes. Well, agency through stillness. And we talked about things like silence isn't passivity, support characters as mirrors, and recovery requires witnesses. But save those questions for the ad break, when the ad break is done. I'll be back. Alright, my friends, we are back from our ad break. Thanks so much for hanging out through that. My ads are a minute and a half long. Unfortunately, I have no control over the fact that we have them, just a function of Twitch. But they're a minute and a half long, so that gives you time to go get a drink of water, get a snack, get up and stretch, because that's super important. I don't do that enough. So that's a great time to do some small self-care activities. Alright. And as my mods like to remind me all the time, I don't take good enough care of myself. So if you think that I need a drink, a stretch, a snack, which I actually do have some, please feel free to use the commands or the channel points to let me know, because I'm constantly forgetting to drink water. But I do have some right here. Alright. She, from your story, she is very much a supporting character, but she's also kind of a mentor to Taryn, actually. Just from everything that we've been kind of talking about, I think that she kind of fills both roles to a degree. It can be really hard to kind of nail down a character if you don't have very many of them, but you're getting there. You know, it's not something that's gonna be instant. Developing characters, especially when you're starting a fresh story where in your case you've never really written before, it takes time to develop each of those characters and their personalities and how they relate to the main character or the protagonist. I have a lot of material to work from, so yeah. But I do think you're right. I do think that she actually kind of covers multiple roles in your particular instance. Oh, of course. All right. Ah, yes. Segment 4. The body remembers. This is very, very true. Because the body does remember things. A lot more than you might think, actually. Recovery isn't only emotional, it's not only psychological, it's not only narrative. It is deeply, profoundly physical. Trauma can leave fingerprints on the body, shallow, lingering, involuntary patterns that persist long after the danger has passed. When writing recovery, honoring these somatic responses is absolutely essential. Chapters 10 and 11 treat the body as a historian, a truth-teller, and a battleground all at once. Let's examine how. The body's reluctance. Physical exhaustion, stiffness, tremors, delayed response. These small markers are written with remarkable restraint. From chapter 10, each step drew on reserve she barely had, every breath hitching faintly against ribs that still protested movement. This is what trauma-informed writing looks like. It's not dramatic, she's not collapsing, and we're not exaggerating agony. Just the residual pain carried quietly and honestly. Here's another example. Her breath caught once, a small hitch like the echo of something remembered, but she didn't wake fully. From chapter 11, the scene of fragile morning. This is not a nightmare. It's not even dramatic thrashing from a nightmare. It's simply the body remembering before the mind is ready to acknowledge. The smallness of the scene is what makes it real. Here's another principle for you to keep in mind in your writing. Physical recovery scenes benefit from understatement. The body whispers before it screams. And that's something I always try to focus on, is keeping any injuries or anything like that. Yeah, some of them are pretty major, but you don't want the whole story to be just about that. You really want to focus in on the character and how they're responding to what's happened to them. That actually is into the next section I want to talk about. The body as a memory. Trauma is often stored in muscle memory, breath, posture, and even our reflexes. My chapters honestly depict this with a subtle mastery. Let's take a look at this line. Even in sleep, her face was drawn, her breath catching now and then as if the dreamscape offered no true peace. Sleep is not the refuge it once was. Her body guards itself even in unconsciousness. And here's another example. When she stirred, her body protested. This matters because trauma isn't linear. Recovery isn't linear. The body never heals in a straight line. Even with Bacta, even with rest, even with care. Physical markers of trauma serve as reminders, grounding points, narrative pacing tools, and emotional tone setters. Ooh, this is a really important one, and it's one that I use a lot. Grounding through objects. One of the most powerful somatic behaviors in trauma recovery is the use of an anchor object. For Marin, this is Jarius' tags. They appear repeatedly. Her hands rested in her lap, her fingers unconsciously curled around Jarius' tags. And again, the only sound she made was the soft clink of Jarius' tags between her fingers. This is exquisite trauma-informed craft. An anchor object serves 3 functions in recovery. Continuity of identity. An object that existed before the trauma becomes a symbolic reminder of who the character is outside of the trauma. Somatic grounding. The physical sensation. The cool metal. The familiar weight. It helps regulate breath and calm the body. An agency. She chooses to hold them. She chooses to keep them close. And she chooses when to set them down. Small physical choices like this are the earliest forms of restored agency. And 4. Instinctive protective motion. One of the most telling pieces of body language writing in this chapter is this. She hesitated before the barest second at the top of the ramp and then forced her boots to move. This is trauma psychology in motion. The pause, the breathing, the internal negotiation, and then the decision. She isn't pushed or pulled. She chooses to move. That's agency. Man, I'm resonating with the next one a lot. Number 5. Exhaustion as reality, not weakness. Many stories mistake fatigue for fragility. Mine don't. Look at how I framed the exhaustion. Her muscles carried tension like an old friend. This isn't weakness. This is conditioning. It's survival and adaptation. Marin's exhaustion is written with dignity. She doesn't collapse dramatically. She doesn't break down sobbing. Her fatigue is lived in. The slow rise from bed, her careful steps, the strain against her residual injuries, the instinctive curl towards warmth and safety. These are the details that make bodily recovery believable. And 6. Touch with purpose. And you'll actually, there's several, there's 5 distinct touch styles that I actually touch on in these chapters. So touch with purpose. In trauma recovery, touch must be carefully managed. My chapters demonstrate 5 distinct touch styles, each with intention. First, there's Ethan. Oh, thanks, Wraith. Thank you. I was totally slouching. Thank you. My shoulders appreciate you. Oh. Alright. Yes. Because my shoulders were cranky. See? This is somebody paying attention to body signals. Very good. So, we have 5 distinct touch styles. Ethan is the grounding touch. Oh, there we go. That might help. His hand came up, warm and solid, a wordless weight. He offers reassurance without demanding a response. Callista is the diagnostic touch. Her fingers lingered briefly to test for fever, for pallor. Her touch is gentle, but clinical, an assessment born of care. Jared is the anchoring touch. His hand covered hers, grounding her more than anything else. This builds relational safety. And Greer is proximity over touch. His presence touches the air around her, not her. This respects her boundaries. And Vec, he's the silent spatial awareness. His touch is environmental, adjusting space, guarding the exits. This is expert-level trauma-informed writing. The touch is never imposed. It is offered, and it is chosen. Ooh. Yeah, my shoulders are kind of tight. 7. Thematic markers of psychological state. These chapters are filled with tiny, resonant details that show Marin's internal struggle through the body. The clenching of her jaw, the tremor in her fingers, the hitching of her breath, the tightness in her shoulders, of which I'm currently dealing with, the slow blink of someone between worlds, the careful posture of someone hiding pain, and the curled knees beside the hearth. These are more powerful than any dramatic breakdown because they're real, they're human, and because they honor what trauma looks like from the inside. That's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, there, and that's kind of why I wanted to really dig into what's going on. Because it not only is it something that I'm really kind of delving into with the writing, I'm kind of living it right now, like, if I'm being honest. I'm dealing with, you know, some health things that are causing a little bit of havoc. So, it's really important for you as a person, but also as a writer, to understand what you might personally be experiencing, but also what your characters are experiencing, and be able to write that effectively. Yeah, there's a lot. Alright. Segment 5. Crafting safe dialogue. Dialogue in recovery scenes carries a different weight than dialogue anywhere else in a story. It's quieter, it's more intentional, more measured, more respectful of breath and space. Recovery dialogue should do 3 things simultaneously. Honor the injured character's emotional bandwidth. Avoid re-traumatization by interrogation or pressure. Offer anchoring, not extraction. These 2 chapters of this balance, let's walk through it a little bit. Dialogue with weight, not volume. In recovery fiction, the most powerful lines are often the shortest. Look at the way Greer speaks to her aboard the shuttle. You sleep this time. Me, Vec, and the boys will watch the lanes. You just breathe. Notice what he does not say. You need to rest. You look terrible. You're weak right now. Instead, he gives her permission, not pressure. You sleep. We'll watch. You breathe. Every clause reduces her burden. Every clause signals shared responsibility. This is in trauma-informed dialogue. Here's another example. Jared upon Marin waking. You stayed, she whispered. I told you I wasn't leaving. From chapter 10. The scene the first light holds. 2 sentences, but the emotional architecture behind them is immense. Marin's line is a mixture of surprise, fragile gratitude, and vulnerability. Jared answers not with flourish, not with a declaration, but with continuity. Recovery dialogue often works best when the tone is steady, simple, predictable, warm, and grounding. Because trauma destabilizes, dialogue and recovery should stabilize. Oh, this next one is really important. 2. Avoiding the tell me everything trope. That's something I have definitely struggled with, and I feel like I did a pretty good job. Because I really have tried to really get into Marin's head and write her in such a way that she's given the space that she needs. Give me 1 second here. Sorry. One of the most harmful tropes in fictional trauma recovery is the demand for recounting. What happened? Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. You have to talk about it. This isn't healing, it's extraction. And I've worked very hard to avoid that. No one in chapters 10 or 11 asks Marin to relive Collier. No one pushes her for the details. No one treats her silence as a problem to fix. Well, I guess the only person who pushed her for details was Connors, but that was back in chapter 9? Anyway, we're getting off track. They wait until she opens the door. And when she does, it's controlled, selective, and on her terms. Look at her choice to speak in the hearth room. She came for me. Out of 30 of them, she zeroed in on me the second I reached out in the force. It wasn't random. This confession isn't pulled from her. It's given freely, and the room receives it with steady quiet. Ethan's response is not analysis, not emotional dumping, but space. This is how you should write supportive listening in recovery scene. 3. Dialogue as stabilization. Some lines exist purely to slow the character's breathing. Jared's tone often does this. For example, you awake? Yeah, I can try. This is stabilizing dialogue. It's a gentle check-in, an open-ended question. It makes no assumptions, and it leaves room for her to say no and room for her to choose her pace. The absence of pressure is what makes this safe. Recovery dialogue should always offer the character choices. 4. Dialogue shouldn't force emotional resolution. I have lived that one a lot, personally. Yeah. And I'll just leave it at that. One of the most dangerous instincts in writing trauma recovery is to rush a character towards a breakthrough. But I try to honor the slow path. Look at this balcony scene. It feels like every time I think I've learned to stand on my own feet, something comes along and proves that I haven't. This is a vulnerable admission, but nobody tries to solve it. Jared doesn't contradict her experience. Ethan doesn't push her towards optimism. No one tries to dismiss her feelings with motivational platitudes. Instead, Jared offers a grounded consistency. Standing doesn't mean you don't stumble. This doesn't erase her emotion or her feelings. It gives it context. Recovery dialogue should validate, connect, gently challenge without negating what the person is feeling, and reflect the shape of the character's world. Sorry, I need water, obviously. Mhm. So, yeah, oh man. This is actually hitting a little closer to home than I thought it might. So, I apologize if this might be a little triggering for anybody, but I felt that it was important to really kind of dig into this kind of writing because it's challenging. It's something that I have definitely struggled with, um, especially as I'm working on Steps in the Past, particularly because there's two big events in this story that really challenge Marin as a character and really kind of knock her on her butt, for lack of a better term. So she has to do a lot of recovering. So. Okay. Using tone to convey safety. Tone is as important as the words themselves. Compare different supportive tones. Jared is often soft and anchoring. He keeps his voice low, his cadence steady, his emotional presence warm and soft. You don't have to say it. We know. And then there's Ethan, who's firm but gentle. His tone has gravity, the weight of someone who's been wounded before. Some wounds don't heal on a clock. And Callista is clinical but warm. Her tone carries medical clarity without coldness. You've rested, but you've not healed yet. And then there's Greer, flipped and practical, as ever the Master Sergeant should be. He speaks in operational shorthand, but his tone is protective. You good to move? They deny. Tone diversity matters in recovery scenes. It creates a multi-dimensional support network around the character. And 6, the strategic use of understatement. That's apparently one of my strongest tools. I have apparently mastered the use of understatement. Because I don't want to give the reader all the answers. I don't want to just, here you go, here's everything. I want to keep them interested, and I feel that it's really important to keep things understated. For example, this is in response to Jared from earlier saying that Marin is late. Graphic. The single word accomplishes easing of tension, grounding her in normalcy, establishing rapport, and giving her a sliver of control. Humor in recovery fiction must be dry, small, anchored in relationships, and non-invasive. And that one simple line is perfect. Because it's funny. Even given everything that's been going on, it's funny. Okay. One second. Okay. 7. Dialogue that rebuilds identity. Recovery is not only about healing physical wounds. It's about remembering who you are. Oh, sorry. Throughout both chapters, the dialogue gently reminds Marin. She's a Marine. She's a Jedi. She's Jarius' daughter. She is someone that these people trust. And she's someone worth guarding. But none of this is actually said to her outright. It's implied in the way that they speak to her and act around her. The dialogue layers do not rebuild identity with declarations. They rebuild it with presence, respect, and continuity. Oh, I actually got through this a lot faster than I thought I would. Okay. We have an ad starting in about 2 minutes. One second. Okay. Um, oh, we're about to be in our ad, my friends. I'll be back. So sorry about that, friends. I needed to step away for just a minute while the ad was running, and it took a little bit longer than I planned. Alright. Okay, here we are. Segment 6. Wow, yes, I can read Roman numerals. Restoration of agency. Agency is not a switch. It's not a moment of triumph. It's not even the point where the story phrases recovery as, and then she stood up and everything was fine. Agency in recovery narratives is the gradual return of the character's ability to choose, to act, to speak, to set boundaries, to seek connection, to define their direction, and to re-enter their own body. Tonight, we're going to go beyond the basics of Segment 6 to examine the architecture of agency, how it forms, how it fails, how it rebuilds, and how fiction can portray that complexity with honesty. Okay. 1 second. Alright. We're going to touch on some things that we already talked about a little bit. So, the 4 pillars of agency. In trauma-informed storytelling, agency returns in 4 dimensions. These often can overlap, but each one has its own signals. Pillar 1. Physical agency. The character chooses how to move, when to move, and how much it costs. These can include things such as shifting position, adjusting posture, choosing a seat, and supporting their own weight. Stepping towards warmth, stepping away from noise, and even choosing when to rest. Marin models this beautifully. She eased herself upright, everything protested, but she rose. This tiny act is monumental. Physical agency is always measured in cost versus choice. Cost equals pain, fatigue, dizziness, or fear. This is why small actions matter. The smaller the action, the more intimate the agency. Pillar 2. Emotional agency. This is the character reclaiming emotional truth without being overwhelmed by it. The signs can include choosing what to share, naming their fear, expressing frustration, Marin does this a lot, allowing vulnerability, refusing to explain, telling someone, not now, or choosing who they speak to. One of the strongest examples is this. Feels like every time I think I've learned to stand on my own feet, something proves I haven't. This is emotional articulation, not collapse. This is the emergence of emotional agency. She's not spiraling. She's naming. This is ownership and agency. Pillar 3. Relational agency. This is choosing how to engage with others. Reaching for someone. Accepting help. Setting a distance. Leaning into someone's shoulder. Allowing someone to stay nearby. Accepting a blanket or a cloak. Choosing not to isolate themselves. Marin's instinctive reach for Jared's sleeve is relational agency in its purest form. It's not a dramatic embrace, it's just a tether, a choice, might be even unconscious, but it's not denied. Reaching is one of the most sacred forms of agency in trauma recovery, fiction, or in real recovery. Pillar 4. Cognitive agency. This is when the character begins making decisions, weighing their options, reflecting on what everything means, planning what they'll do next. Cognitive agency returns last, and often quietly. Marin's moment echoes this. She would try again in the morning. This is the implied final emotional beat of Chapter 11. That's cognitive agency. It's not certainty, it's not clarity, it's choice. Two, when agency falters and why it matters. Recovery isn't linear. We've talked about that. Agency returns in steps or waves. After chapter 11, Marin has flickers of stability, flickers of fear, flickers of determination. This fluctuating is authentic. Fiction often wants to present a clean arc, hurt, to heal, to move on. But the truth, both human and narrative, is more like stable, destabilized, grounded, overwhelmed, connected, withdrawn, reaching, resting, rising. Been there. This oscillation is not a problem. It's true recovery. When writing this oscillation, three things matter. The character must never lose their dignity, even in fear, even in fragility. Their support network must not overtake the narrative. They scaffold, they don't overshadow. The character must remain the center of their own arc. Others respond to their cues. Measuring agency in scenes. Let's break down an advanced tool, agency mapping. This is how you can chart a recovery scene to ensure that the character's agency is present, even when it might be limited. Agency mapping asks this: what does the character choose in this scene? What can't they choose? What are they avoiding? What are they gravitating towards? And where does the agency live? In their body? In their emotion? In their relationships? Or in their cognition or their mind? Let's map Marin's balcony moment. What she chooses: to walk outside, to breathe the cold air, to speak her truth, and to stay in proximity to Jared. What she can't choose yet: how she feels about Collier, whether she trusts her own instincts, whether she can re-enter full duty, and what she avoids: talking about the details, being touched without consent, being inside too long. What she gravitates towards: the open air, the quiet, the things that are familiar, the warmth of the fire, and safety in numbers. This is a clean, powerful map of soft, emergent agency. 4. Writing the shift from survival to living. In trauma fiction, the character often begins in survival mode. They have a narrow focus, their breathing might be tight or shallow, and their instinct overwhelms reflection. Slowly they re-enter living mode, connection, ritual, routine, breathing that actually reaches down into the ribs. Here are some signs that a character is leaving survival mode. They notice small comforts, they accept food, they lean into warmth, they seek silence instead of fearing it, they respond to humor, they might even initiate small talk, and they breathe deeper. These two chapters show this shift beautifully, honestly. When Marin responds to the single dry word, traffic, that's living mode. Humor is a sign of returning to self. The role of ritual in restoring agency. Ritual is often an anchor of identity, and identity is the foundation of agency. Examples of ritual in recovery could be things like drinking your morning tea, touching an anchor object, lighting the fire, folding your blankets, kneeling for meditation, reciting a creed or maxim, sitting in a familiar spot. These are not filler scenes, they are self-repair. Ritual is continuity, continuity is identity, and identity is agency. In Chapter 11, the hearth functions as a ritual, its warmth, history, and memory made physical. Marin moves towards it not because she's weak, but because she is reassembling the pieces of herself. And that's a lot. Please, as always, feel free to put some questions in the chat and I will try to address them. I know that we're covering quite a lot this evening and some of it might be a little heavy. Thanks, Ajo. I appreciate you. Yes, feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat regarding everything we just covered. It's a lot. I'm sorry. Trying to slow myself down. Thanks, H.O. I appreciate you. Don't need to get you banned from the forums. Number 6. Environmental empowerment. Environment is often a partner in recovery storytelling. When the environment is quiet, warm, steady, familiar, and open, it allows the character's agency to surface. When the environment is loud, bright, crowded, unpredictable, it suppresses or threatens the character's agency. Tanagas is often written as a recovery environment. The soft dawn, the cool air, the low firelight, the steady stone, the private rooms, small spaces of safety, and silent guardians. This is a deeply intentional writing choice. Safety in the environment gives the character room to choose. This is how agency grows. This next one is a very important thing, and it applies outside of fiction too, by the way. The final act of agency. Seeking rest. One of the most undervalued truths in recovery writing. Rest is a choice, not a default, not a weakness. A traumatized character often fights rest with hypervigilance, feelings of guilt, fears of being vulnerable, nightmares, or a sense of eternal urgency. When they choose rest, that's agency. Marin choosing to lie back near the hearth or to stay near Jared as she drifts is not frailty. It's authority over her own limits. Choosing rest is one of the strongest narrative markers of agency you can write. And it's also one of the strongest things you can do for yourself. When you feel like you're tired, definitely. I will also have a summary and some homework assignments for you guys if you're interested in the Discord. Would love to see anybody's process on any of those if you would like to share. That's what that channel is for. All right. 8. Foreshadowing strength without forcing resolution. Recovery scenes can foreshadow future strength without rushing the arc. Hints may include a straightened spine, squared shoulders, steadier breath, a moment of clarity, a spark in the eye, a line spoken with conviction. These signals whisper, she will rise. Not today, but soon. These chapters conclude with exactly that tone. It's not triumph, not closure, but readiness. This is the most respectful way to end a recovery segment without betraying the truth of healing. Give me 1 second here. I don't want to end just yet. As always, you guys can post questions here in the chat, and if I'm not live and you have questions, please feel free to add them in the Discord. You can definitely drop them in the writing workshop channel. That's kind of what it's for. Because I love answering questions. I'm by no means a professional writer. I do this for fun, but I like to share my knowledge and my nerdiness because it's fun. Okay. So we're gonna cover one more big section, and then that might actually take us to the end. Okay, so this is going to be segment 7. There we go. I know. But I know. I'm a lore nerd. I know I'm a lore gremlin. You guys know this about me, and I love to share my passions about writing, about Star Wars: The Old Republic, or about Star Wars in general. And honestly, I really like talking about why I write the way that I do. I was really nervous about that initially, but I've gotten a lot more comfortable with it. Ooh. Segment 7. Writing agency across arcs. And this actually ties in really well with how I've been writing Marin the whole time. Restoration of agency doesn't end when the character stands, speaks, or even returns home. It's not confined to a single chapter, a single moment, or even a single emotional turning point. It's a long-term arc unfolding across scenes, chapters, entire storylines, or even multiple books, which is the case. This segment focuses on how to carry agency as a narrative thread, sustained, layered, and believable throughout a wider arc. We'll use Marin's journey as a model, but the principles apply to any character across any story. 1. Agency must evolve over time. It doesn't look the same at the beginning of a recovery arc as it does at the midpoint or the end. Early agency behaviors are simple things like choosing to breathe, accepting support, limiting their speaking, very small, limited movements, or reaching towards something that's warm or something that makes them feel safe. Mid-agency behaviors are things like stepping back into routine, asking questions, expressing a desire for something. Small but intentional confrontations. This happens a lot with Marin. She gets really, like, sick of sitting still. Independent grounding rituals. In Marin's case, this would be her handling Jarish's tags. She does that a lot. It's a grounding thing for her. Late agency behaviors would be things like making decisions that change the story, confronting the source of the trauma, stepping into leadership or mentorship, reclaiming a lost identity, and defining themselves on new terms. Your job as a storyteller is to allow the character's agency to change shape, to grow, to regress, and to strengthen again, and to never flatten into a single expression. Please, please, please ask all the questions you want. I would love to get into a discussion because I am really, really liking digging into Marin's story. I really am. It's a lot deeper and detailed than I initially thought it was. So. Okay. We have an ad starting in just under 5 minutes. 2. Agency should not leap forward. It should coalesce. Think of agency like sediment. A layer here. Oh. T is definitely a mentor to Marin. She wasn't really sure what to make of him when she first met him. the Katani as a people are very... They say what they mean in as few words as possible. And it wasn't... I mean, yes, Marin had grown up around Jerry, so she had a little bit of that, but going from Jarius's form of structure to the Praxium was kind of a shock for her. But I really think that learning under Stefan for her was good, because it got her out of her comfort zone, and she was able to learn from not just him, but other people. Andrea, Rinius, Dylan, Ballista, multiple people, but Stefan was her main mentor, and he really helped her kind of develop her identity as a Jedi, but he also didn't force her to take the vows that the Jedi traditionally took when they undertook training, like she might have had to take at Benrilla or at the temple on Coruscant even, because the Jedi of those academies were a lot more, oh, I don't know, traditional, orthodox, I suppose. So I think that it was really good for her to be able to study under Stefan and be able to explore not only who her abilities that she was learning, but also how she could still be true to herself. And I think that's really, really important, is if you have a character that's kind of walking between two worlds, they need to be able to find their own identity. Does that make sense? Sorry. Oh dear. Okay. Oh dear. Agency should not leap. It should coalesce. Think of agency like sediment or soil. A layer here, a layer there. It builds quietly over time through repetition of choice. Oh. Did I lose stream for a second there? Or was chat just being slow? Can you guys hear me? Okay, just checking, because that was doing weird things. Readers often... Oh, thank you. Hey, Tin Man, welcome in. Alright, our ad's gonna start in about a minute. Readers often feel cheated when a character goes instantly from "I can barely stand" to "I'm ready to take on the world" in the span of a scene or even a chapter. But readers often feel deeply satisfied when the arc shows strength returning slowly, resilience earned, confidence being rebuilt, autonomy reclaimed, breath by breath and scene by scene. Chapters 10 and 11 are Marin's first layer of restored agency. Later arcs and steps into the past of Warrior's Heart and beyond will build the next layers. Agency must accumulate like weathering, not erupt like volcanoes. I'm gonna pause there because we're about to have an ad. And I don't want to be reading through the ad because that's mean. Or speaking through the ad, I guess. Alright. Hi, Tin Man. I will be back in a minute and a half. We have an ad. Alright, my friends, we are back from our ad break. Wraith, this may actually be helpful for you and anybody else who's trying to deal with character agency. This is a little exercise. 3. Track agency moment to moment. Here's a tool that you can use. I'm calling it agency journaling. For each major scene, jot down these things. What does the character choose? What does the character refuse? What does the character avoid? What does the character reach for? What is too painful for them right now? And what are they able to control? By tracking choices instead of emotions, you keep agency visible, even in vulnerable scenes. Let's take Marin's hearthroom moment as an example. She chooses warmth, proximity, and limited speech. She refuses to recount everything. She avoids being alone. She reaches for the fire and for Jared. It's too painful for her to confront her own instincts. She is able to control her breathing and her own silence. 4. Agency must align with identity. Characters often return to agency through the lens of who they are, not who the writer wants them to become. This is one of the most common mistakes in recovery fiction. The writer forces the character into strong behavior before they're ready, or forces vulnerability in a character who would not express it, or erases existing skill sets to dramatize fragility, or gives them a sudden competence without the cost. Instead, agency should rise through culture, one's training, their personality, their worldview, their emotional history, their internal scars, and their personal desires. Marin's agency rises through these things: Katani discipline, Mandalorian steel, Jedi breathwork, Jarius' lessons, her own instincts for survival, and her quiet refusal to break. These are consistent for her. They don't vanish in her trauma. They become hushed, but not erased. When she returns to agency, she returns through the same door she entered the story with. This is the core of long-term authenticity. 5. Agency after trauma always has a cost. No character returns to full agency without consequence. That cost may appear as things such as physical limitations, lingering fear, caution about specific triggers, harder choices, deeper introspection, a need for support, a different worldview, stricter boundaries, higher personal stakes, or redefined relationships. In narrative terms, this means agency must grow, but it must grow around the scar. The scar isn't failure, it's history, its texture, and its narrative depth. Marin's arc, especially in later stories, will bear these scars openly: distrust of coincidences, reevaluation of her instincts, caution in her force use, slow return to physical training, reliance on her support network, guardedness around exposure, and fear of repeating the same mistakes. This isn't weakness, this is a lived truth. Agency is strongest when it grows in harmony with the wound. Yeah, there's a lot of heavy stuff in here, I'm sorry guys. But I hope that it's helpful to you, if you're, whether you're an aspiring writer, whether you're someone who's just starting out, whether you just write fanfiction like me. This is actually something, these 2 chapters in particular really kind of hit home for me because of things that I've been dealing with lately. So it's actually been really interesting for me to kind of step into that space, story-wise. 6. Long-term agency requires contradiction. A believable recovery arc contains contradictions. Wanting solitude but also fearing it. Wanting to be strong but needing to rest. I'm dealing with that. Wanting answers but avoiding the truth. Craving connection but shrinking from touch. feeling ready but freezing when something happens, laughing one moment and shaking the next. These contradictions do not indicate inconsistency, they indicate humanity. Contradictions are the sign that a character is still in motion, they're still healing, and they're still living. Marin embodies contradiction across her arcs, fierce and frightened, disciplined and shaken, confident and hesitant, anchored and adrift. Contradiction is strength, not a flaw. 7. External agency versus internal agency. This is one of the most overlooked distinctions. External agency is what the character can do in the world, such as fight, run, command, negotiate, confront, or undertake missions. Internal agency is what the character can do within themselves. Breathing, choosing, setting their own boundaries, feeling things without drowning, speaking honestly, and accepting help. Accepting help is one of the hardest things to do, let me tell you. Trauma damages internal agency first. External ability often collapses later or appears intact while internal agency is shattered. I do my best to restore internal agency before external. Marin does not leap into training, rush into confrontation, take on decision-making, attempt to prove herself. Instead, she breathes, she leans on the ones around her, she acknowledges her fear, she accepts warmth, she reaches for safety, she's selective about what she speaks, and she lets herself rest. This is correct, humane, and this is how internal agency rebuilds. External agency, which could be combat, missions, leadership, this returns only after the internal structure is strong enough to hold it. Yeah. So this is where we start dealing with, like, Marin's whole arc. It touches on this a little bit. If anything I'm talking about is confusing to you, if you have any questions, comments, please let me know in the chat. I would love to have a discussion about that. Eight. Agency across book arcs. This is a structural technique. Think of agency as a 3-act structure across multiple chapters or books. Act 1 is fragmented agency. Your character is wounded. They might feel like they have limited choices. They are often silent. Their safety is uncertain, and their identity might be shaken. Act 2 could be seen as emerging agency. The character often seeks connection. They chooses small actions. They begin confronting their internal truths. They assert boundaries. They experience small victories. They often oscillate between ground and collapse. And Act 3, integrated agency. Characters make transformative choices. They confront antagonists or their past. They engage in purpose. They often reclaim identity. They embody both strength and vulnerability. Marin's endgame arc moves towards this 3rd act. By stepping into a pivotal confrontation, returning to her Mandalorian and Jedi heritage, she's making choices aligned with her truth, and refusing to be defined by her wounds. Agency across arcs is not about returning to who she was. It's about becoming who she is now. And most importantly, agency requires memory. Characters cannot reclaim their agency unless they remember who hurt them, what they survived, who they were before they were injured, who they became during the event, and who they want to be now. Memory is a narrative continuity. It's an emotional truth, and it's the anchor through which agency is often reclaimed. This is why Jaehaerys' tags matter. This is why the Hearth matters. And this is why the voices of Ethan, Jared, Greer, and Callista matter. Recovery is not forgetting what happened. It is remembering without drowning. Oh. Give me 1 second, guys. Ooh. So I have some... I would really love to hear your questions about all of that, because we have covered quite a lot, and I'm sure that you have questions. But if you don't, I have some questions that might help. What if my character doesn't want to heal yet? This is one of the most common things that people run up against. Some characters resist healing because the wound often defines their identity. They fear regression. Healing feels like betrayal. They might still be in danger, or they feel like they're waiting for permission. If your character resists healing, don't force them into recovery. Instead, give them safety, time, a witness, or multiple witnesses. Give them a grounding object or two, and give them small choices. Recovery is not obedience, it is readiness. Let them reach that readiness honestly. I mean... self-denial. That sounds like waiting for permission. Or betrayal. Yeah, that sounds like waiting for permission or betrayal of some kind. That feels like maybe they need to do some soul searching, perhaps. Oh. So this is actually something that I have seen often in some of the stories that I've read. How do I avoid trauma porn or over-dramatizing? There are 3 rules that I follow, which we have discussed. 1. Understate, don't overwhelm. A tremor in the breath is more honest than screaming breakdown. Let the character keep their dignity, even in fear or fragility. 3. Focus on agency, not spectacle. Ask, where is the choice in this particular moment? Your job isn't to display their pain, it's to bear witness to the character's courage. And if your character is struggling with weakness or illness, maybe there's another character that can help them, help provide them the space that they need to admit that to themselves. I mean, I've done that with Marin a lot. Maybe you need a witness. Somebody who can be there for the character to kind of give them the space to feel safe enough to admit whatever it is they're trying to avoid. I hope that helps, Ruthlin. I do. It's things that I have struggled with Marin, actually. She's incredibly stubborn. She is really, really stubborn. Now, how would we make recovery interesting to our readers? Well, you make it interesting by making it human. Recovery scenes often shine when they contain micro choices. Little small choices like choosing to sit up. Sensory details like the feel of her father's tags in Marin's fingers, the texture of the blanket under her fingers, internal conflict. That could be things like, well, I should be doing this, but I'm currently at this point. So and that's something that Marin deals with a lot. And I'm kind of the same way. she is incredibly stubborn and feels like she should be able to just get up and do whatever she needs to do and keep moving. And she can't always do that. Tiny victories. Being able to sit up without being dizzy. Meaningful quiet. Maybe it's just spending time with someone that they're close to. Symbolic objects for Marin, this would be her father's tags, or maybe something from the shrine in her home. Relational support, so that's the people around your character. So for Marin, that's Ethan, Callista, Jared, Greer, all of the people in her immediate vicinity, and they have varying degrees of relationship with her, as we talked about earlier. Your readers don't really need giant explosions and crazy things happening all the time. They need truth. A character steadying themselves on a doorframe can be more gripping than a battle scene if written with emotional precision. I spend a lot of time, especially in A Warrior's Heart and Steps into the Past in particular, dealing with Marin's recovery from some pretty heavy stuff. Yeah. So if you guys are interested in reading A Warrior's Heart, I can get you the link in chat. Actually, you know what? Keep in mind that, there we go. So Archive of Our Own is where I have all my stories posted. I'm gonna sidebar for a second. And A Warrior's Heart actually deals with an extended recovery sequence for Marin following a particular event. And I think that Rothlin, that may be helpful to you. So the story is called A Warrior's Heart, or Beverd Partha, I think is the Mandalorian word, the Mandalorian phrase. So if you, that story may actually be helpful to you with your particular situation. So if you'd like to take a look at that, definitely feel free. I do try to keep AO3 up to date as to what chapters are, or what stories are in what kind of phase, because I am in the process of rewriting and updating, or just doing the initial writing for several of them, and I try to keep that marked on the profile. So that may actually be helpful for you. When should my character talk about their trauma? Okay, we've been over this. Marin doesn't really talk about it. A character should only talk about their trauma when they feel safe, when they're ready, when they feel seen, and when they decide it's the right moment. They should never do it because the plot demands it, another character demands it, or even me as the writer demands it. I really try to make sure that Marin in particular is able to speak when she's ready, and not before. If the character isn't ready, just let the silence be what it is. It's not a gap, it's a boundary. Ooh. Rafe, this might be helpful for you, and Rothlin as well, actually, and anybody else who's writing supporting characters. How do I write supporting characters in recovery scenes? Supporting characters should follow 3 guiding principles. Mirror the injured character's tempo. If they're quiet, be quiet. If they're slow, be steady. Remove emotional labor from the recovering character. Don't say, "I was so worried," or "you scared me," or "you need to talk." Be competent, not performative. Support means competence, not drama. Think about Jared's vigil, Greer's perimeter, Callista's quiet assessment, Ethan's grounding hand. They hold the perimeter of safety, allowing the recovering character to breathe. But yes, wow, Rothlin, can't English today. I do think that in your particular instance, reading A Warrior's Heart, also known as Bavard Karta over on AO3, may be of use to you in your particular situation. So if you have a moment or some time, please feel free to go read that. Can recovery happen without dialogue? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Some of the most powerful recovery scenes often contain no words. Think about Marin and the things that we've read. For her, it's a lot of shared silence, soft folded blankets, warm tea, soft firelight, steady proximity from those who care about her, and hands lightly holding anchor objects. Dialogue is often optional, but presence in these scenes is essential. Ooh. Oh, Rothlin, this is a good one for you. And probably Wraith too, or anybody else who is dealing with a character that's stuck or recovering from something. How do you know when your character is ready for action again? You should look for 3 things. Cognitive readiness. They begin making future choices. Emotional readiness. They can name a truth without collapsing beneath it. And physical readiness. Their movement is still costly, but it's intentional. Returning to action should feel like a next step, not a leap. If it feels rushed or forced, the character isn't ready yet. Okay. Oops. Awesome. We have an ad starting in about 5 minutes, my friends. Okay. Alrighty. I'm actually going to... Oh, like 9 o'clock. I'm gonna close out here, hopefully before the ad break hits. I do appreciate you all being here this evening, and I hope that this was helpful to you. As always, feel free to leave questions in the Discord. If you're not in the Discord, you can join by going here. I would love to see all of your questions, comments, and be happy to workshop with you guys in the Discord for any other questions you have. As we close our workshop tonight, I want you to hold on to this truth. Recovery is never a fixed point in a narrative. It's a journey woven into the character, breath by breath, choice by choice. When you write recovery scenes, give them time, give them space, give the character dignity, and give it resonance. Let your character rise to their own pace, and above all, let agency return softly, honestly, and with courage. If you take one lesson from tonight, let it be this. Trauma takes, agency gives, recovery is the bridge between. Thank you all for being here, for writing stories with heart, and for treating your characters with the care that they deserve. I will be live again next Sunday. I usually would stream on Wednesday and I would read this week, but I have a family commitment on Wednesday night, so I have pushed the reading stream to Sunday at our usual time, which is 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope to see you all there. We will be reading chapters 10 and 11 of Steps into the Past, and as you may or may not know, I have reduced my stream time to 2 to 2.5 hours in an effort to kind of mind my own health. Like I said, I've been dealing with a lot of things health-wise, over the last month or so, and it's important when you guys are dealing with health issues or anything like that to listen to your body. So that's something that I have really been trying to do the last month, and it kind of ties into what we were talking about tonight, recovery. So it's really important to listen to your own body if you're dealing with anything. Um, Pay attention to the signals that it's giving you and honor those as much as you would honor those for a character that you're writing who's in recovery. So please take care of yourselves, and I hope that this was helpful to you. Take care of yourselves, drink some water. If you have meds, please take them, and please get some rest. And I will see you all on Sunday. I'm actually not going to, well, I was not going to raid out tonight, but let me take a look real quick. No, I should actually get ready for bed. That is what my body is telling me. So, I hope to see you all on Sunday for our next Storytime stream at 7 p.m. Eastern. Hope you all have a good rest of your evening and a good start to your week. And I hope to see you all on the next stream. Take care of yourselves, my friends.